Vũ ơi, đây là bản kịch bản voice over tiếng Anh, kể theo ngôi thứ nhất nhịp. Tự nhiên như một người Mỹ đang tâm sự chuyển đổi, mình có hook 3 câu đầu thật gạt, nhiều pattern interrupt, câu hỏi cho khán giả twist ở giữa mini CTR, giữa video và một cái kết vừa thỏa, vừa gây tranh cãi. Mình viết liền mạch dùng dầu phẩy, dầu gạch ngang và dầu theo yêu cầu tránh xuống dòng thừa và không dùng dầu em dash. You ever trust a stranger more than your own blood just because of the way they say your name? Because the day my housekeeper grabbed my arm and whispered, "Shut up. Don't say a word," I opened my bedroom door and found my wife in bed with my little brother. Yeah, that happened. I didn't yell, didn't throw anything, didn't perform rage for the cameras we didn't have. I froze like someone unplugged me from the wall, and all the lights inside went dark at once. Amanda yanked the sheet up like fabric could erase the fact Doug's bare feet slapped the floor, and for a full, breathless 10 count, nobody moved. If it were you, what would you have done? Let me take you back. Not far, just a couple hours. To 3 o'clock Arizona sun, a meeting in Scottsdale canceled by a text that felt like a get-out-of-jail-free card. I told myself, you know what? I'll be the good husband today. I'll come home early. We'll go somewhere new for dinner. Somewhere where the servers use your first name and the lights are soft. Maybe we'll talk about that trip we keep postponing. I slipped my key into the gate like a teenager sneaking back after curfew, smiling at my own corny plan, thumb still typing a last email on a phone I've treated like a pacemaker for years. But the house was wrong. No music, TV, dark air, so still, it felt pressurized like the walls were holding their breath. Then I saw Cindy in the kitchen, rag in her hand, shoulders too tight, eyes too wide. She moved like a ghost, could hear us, pressed her fingers into my sleeve and whispered, "Shut up, don't say a word." No drama in her voice, just an edge that cut through my fog. You know that drop in your stomach when your body knows before your mind would dare admit it. I followed her eyes down the hallway. The clock on the wall ticked like a nail gun. I heard a laugh, then another, 2 voices overlapping a rhythm of people who think nobody can hear them. My hand touched the knob, and something inside me stepped away from my own body to watch. When the door opened, the world stopped. Amanda, half-covered hair, messy lipstick, not mine. Doug, shirtless, shock painted across his face like a child caught with his hand in the jar. Amanda's mouth formed words before sound arrived. "Henry, it's not what you think," which is a sentence nobody has ever believed in the whole history of bedrooms. Doug reached for me the way a man reaches for a fire extinguisher after he lit the match, and I took a step back like a voice in my skull said, "If you touch me right now, you don't come back from this." I turned around, walked down the hall, past our wedding photos that suddenly looked like stock images for a brochure about lying past the couch where we used to fall asleep on Sunday nights, out the front door into too much light. Keys, car ignition, road. Gone. I drove like a man trying to outrun a sound beltway, to interstate, the kind of highway where the billboards sell fireworks and injury lawyers, where gas stations smell like burned coffee and windshield fluid. My phone danced off the passenger seat from all the calls. I turned it off and let the silence crawl into the car with me. At a truck stop, I bought a bottle of water and stared at it for a long time before drinking, like hydration was a moral question now. If you've ever found out 2 truths at once, that your life isn't what you thought, and that you helped build the door they walked through, then you know the particular weight I'm talking about. If you don't, I hope you never do. Night in a roadside hotel, loud AC carpet the color of old pennies. I lay flat on top of the covers like I was afraid the bed might swallow me, watched the ceiling bump out shadows every time a semi rolled by. No tears. The hurt was too heavy to lift into crying. It sat on my chest like a concrete block and dared me to breathe around it. In the morning, I took a shower so hot, it felt like confession put on yesterday's clothes, and drove with no destination until the tank forced a decision. I rolled into a small town that smelled like bread and asphalt after heat parked near the square, and watched old men play dominoes with the concentration of surgeons, teenagers, scrolling a toddler, arguing with a pigeon. Ordinary life is loud when yours just detonated. I walked into a bar on the corner because the door was open and the chalkboard said coffee and the lights were low. That's where I met Tess. Black t-shirt, hair pulled back, eyes that look like they've seen storms, and learned to carry umbrellas without bragging about it. She poured me a beer, then slid it back and said, "You look like you need water first." I smiled without humor, nodded, drank, and tried to remember how to be a person who isn't performing for investors or employees or anyone who wants something from me. Tess didn't pry. She asked regular questions. Where you headed, long day, want the burger or the salad? And somehow the regularness of it felt like a life raft. Sometimes a stranger's ordinary is better medicine than a friend's advice. You know what I mean. I slept a little that night, not much, but enough to stand up in the morning without feeling like a statue. I called my accountant. Not the shiny guy, the quiet one with a soft voice who's been with me since the early years, who knows the way my numbers breathe. I told him I needed a discreet audit of the last 6 months. No drama, no gossip, just truth on paper. He said, "Okay," in that calm way old pros say, "Okay," when they understand the request under the request. Then my hands did something my head hadn't planned. They steered me to the duplex where Mrs. Ruth still lives. She practically raised us when our parents were gone more than they were home. Green paint peeling from the gate wind chime still hitting the same note it always did. She opened the door, looked at me, and said my name with the kind of tenderness you don't earn. You just get because you existed around someone long enough. We sat in her kitchen, buttered toast and coffee, thick enough to stand a spoon in, and I told her everything. She listened with her hands folded, eyes soft but unblinking, the way a person listens when they've learned you can't rush pain. When I finished, she said one thing that moved the furniture in my head. Your brother always carried a weight you never had. He never learned to be grateful. Not an excuse, not a diagnosis, just a sentence that opened a door I'd kept nailed shut. Maybe this fuse had been burning since we were kids. Maybe I'd been breathing smoke so long I forgot to smell it. I went home because I didn't want to give the house away by staying gone. The air smelled like Amanda's candles, sweet enough to feel like a prank. Cindy was wiping the edge of a cabinet, eyes steady. "Can we talk?" I asked. She nodded, took off her gloves, led me to the little patio out back where the light always looks blue in late afternoon. And then she told me things I didn't know. Doug had been coming by when I traveled sometimes through the back gate. She'd seen him open my safe with a key I never gave him. She recognized a blue envelope I barely remembered, the one I'd stuffed with contracts after a long day, the one I asked her to hand me while I locked things up. She said a name, Roy, and then put a folded paper in my hand, something she'd pulled from the trash because the name stuck in her head. An LLC registration, fake SSN, the mailing address our family uses for the beach house in the Outer Banks. It landed like a second betrayal. Not just the bed, but the books. Not just love, but money. I thanked her like someone who just realized the only loyal person in the house is the one everybody treats like furniture. 5 a.m, coffee pen on legal pad, names and dates, and weird little memories linking up like magnets under the table, pulling on each other until a shape appears. I texted my accountant again. I opened our systems, something I should have done more, and watched small transactions in a pattern a lazy thief would love. Tiny transfers to companies that never appear on the partner sheet, alternating days, amounts low enough to sleep under the radar. I asked HR for a list of accounting hires over 2 years, with who referred them. One name blinked like a turn signal. Leon Sampson, referred by Doug. By 9 o'clock, my accountant was in my office with a folder heavy enough to bruise. "This is odd," he said, in that quiet tone that means it's not odd, it's bad. Small transfers to Shell LLCs opened by the same outside accountant, Roy Martin, booked as external support, no matching contracts in the archive. How much, I asked. "North of $1 million spread out," he said. "And most of the approval trails end at Doug's digital signature." I looked out the window at a city that didn't care about my family soap opera and thought about how trust can make you lazy with proof. This next part, don't judge until you answer the question for yourself. Would you break into your brother's office if the future of everything you built depended on the answer? I used a director's key I'd never used, sat at his desk and typed in the Windows password. He's been too proud to change since forever. Birth year, like he was daring the universe to guess him. Email was signed in. I searched Roy Invoice LLC Geosat payment. In 2 minutes, I had a smoking subject line. "Roy, we need to form another company. Clean name. Payment next week. Henry can't suspect anything." I found a thread with Leon about backdating and avoiding audit windows. I forwarded all of it to a brand new private account, cleared the history, straightened the chair, and walked out with my face flat so the cameras wouldn't catch a man about to break open his own life. I drove back to Tess. "You trust me?" she asked, closing the bar for an hour like it was a war room. "I don't know if I trust anybody," I said, "but I know you're not lying to me to protect a story you've been telling yourself." She took the flash drive, opened files, stripped metadata from PDFs, like bones, found patterns, traced origins. These 3 were born on the same machine, she said, tapping the screen, and that machine is registered to a workstation that says Leon. I checked our asset inventory from my phone. Leon. Patterns piling up. Not proof of intent yet, but proof of action, and action leaves footprints the way wet boots do. We built a deck. Not for drama or applause, for clarity. Chronological. Emails with full headers, wire confirmations with routing numbers, state filings with stamps and dates and addresses that point to our beach house mailbox. A slide that listed every payment under the external support flag with vendors that don't exist in our partner registry. And then we decided to go public because denial thrives in private hallways. Thursday morning investor update, a room full of expensive coffee and expensive opinions. Tess would run the visuals, I'd run my mouth for once in the right direction. Pattern interrupt, because life loves to add a subplot. 3 days before the event, a sensational blog posted a dossier painting me as a tax cheat. Half-truths cut up and pasted around insinuations, old emails about legal savings glued to brand new allegations, all wrapped in red font, as if that color turns gossip into gospel. Investors called with edge in their voices. The board called with that corporate tone meant to say, "Calm down," while implying maybe don't. Tess traced the upload, found a path back to a laptop associated with, of course, Leon. We documented, packaged, delivered to a DA, who had already started a file, then went back to the work of dragging truth into the light. The next morning, an anonymous text hit my phone. A link. No words. I tapped and a video opened. Shaky hand, too close, zoom long, creepy shots of people I love. Amanda on a patio, my mother's building entrance, Cindy leaving the store with tomatoes and bread. A low man's voice at the end. Everybody has weaknesses. That cold finger slid down my spine, and I stood so fast the chair scraped the floor. I called my lawyer first. I called Tess next. "He's trying to yank you off your line," she said. "Document it all. Do not act like a movie hero. We're not doing vigilante, we're doing verifiable. Still, I drove to my mom's, sat on her couch like a son held her hand, like a man told her it would be okay, while knowing okay is a journey, not a moment. Then I drove to Cindy's place. 3 a.m. kitchen light off, only the fridge glow, Cindy sitting with a mug she kept warming up and forgetting to drink. "I need to tell you something," she said, and then she told me her real name. Priscilla. A man she ran from. A cop with friends. A churchwoman who helped her disappear and handed her a new name like a door into a life where she could wake up without counting the locks twice. She gave me an envelope with old reports and hospital papers, and a request for a restraining order, the kind of thin paperwork women are told will make them safe while the world debates how dangerous men ever are. I took it, put it in my safe, looked at her and said, "You didn't trick me, you survived." Her shoulders dropped like somebody had set down a heavy bag she forgot she was carrying. Sometimes the truest people in your life are the ones nobody sees at the parties. You know what I mean. Thursday came like a storm we scheduled. The ballroom smelled like pastries and nerves. We ran the usual numbers. I did the song and dance for exactly 5 minutes. Then I took a breath and said, "Before we continue, there is something you deserve to see." Tess clicked, and the screen filled with an email from Doug to Roy. Then wires, then filings, then a timeline that clicked in the room like a lock catching. People shifted, leaned, whispered, fell quiet. 2 slides in a side door slammed open, and Doug arrived in a suit that didn't fit his face anymore. He shouted lies the way men shout when paper proves things their charisma can't save. Security moved. He moved. The room watched a mask fall in public, and I felt something I won't call joy. I'll call air. We finished. I said we had referred everything to law enforcement. People clapped, not for me, for clarity. Afterward, I leaned against a hallway wall and Tess said, "It's done." I shook my head. Almost. Justice moves like a loaded truck, sometimes slow up the hill and then fast on the way down. Roy got picked up at the airport with forged IDs and a face that looked surprised only at the timing. Leon found a lawyer and discovered his voice. The DA's office used words like scheme and conspiracy and identity fraud, which is the legal way of saying you built a house on lies and invited your mother over to see it. Our stock slipped, a couple investors bailed, others doubled down, audits marched in like a very tidy army and did the thing they do, which is weigh everything and report, not speculate. Now you might not like this next move, but real life is messy and we're not doing a fairy tale. I asked Amanda to meet me. She looked like sleep was something other people get. I told her we had proof of the shells and the wires and the signatures. She went pale. At first I didn't know, she said, voice small but steady. "He told me you approved everything off the books to move faster." When I realized what it was, I got scared. He threatened to leak private photos and messages and ruin both of us. I said, "Tell the truth, now, all of it." And she did. She brought texts, voice notes, and the name of a foreign account he used under a woman's name he called Teresa. I won't call it redemption. I'll call it step 1. Do you think that's fair? We set a sting, not the movie kind with car chases, the real kind, with calendar invites and a fake domain. A fabricated international firm with a clean site, a phone number that rings an IVR that sounds expensive, and an email that says, "High returns, low paperwork, quiet partners, Thursday at 4 p.m. Aurora Hotel Executive Suite." Cindy wore a badge and played receptionist like she'd done it her whole life. Tess set cameras and audio with timestamps you can't argue with. I walked into the suite at 4:01 and closed the door. Doug stood up so fast his chair squalled on the marble. "What is this?" he said, lip curling like a teenager's. "This is the end of your show," I said, laying a flash drive on the table. "Emails wires your notes to Leon Roy's stamps, and that video link you sent to rattle me. Also, there's a judge downstairs with paperwork you won't like." He took a step like he might dare something. 2 officers entered. He turned toward the door like a man who still thinks doors are there to save him, and that was that. Tess broke down the gear. Cindy took off the badge and breathed like oxygen had an opinion again. I stood alone in the room for a second and looked at the chair where he'd been at the 2 half bottles of water on the table at the Hotel Art with sailboats and felt not victory, closure. Mini call to action for you right here. Stick around, because what happened next will blow your mind. A gray envelope showed up on my desk 2 weeks later, handwriting, careful like ink, could behave better if you asked politely. Inside a letter from Doug. "If you want to know what vertigo in a chair feels like, read a paragraph that starts, 'Before I go, you need to know. Amanda had my child,' and ends with a folded photo of a baby in Amanda's arms, 6 months old. He wrote that he hid it to protect me, to protect the company, to keep the image clean, all the pretzel logic men use to justify control when love isn't available. He told me to take care of the kid if I could. He wrote goodbye like a man auditioning for tragic." I sat very still while the room leaned a little, and my throat found out it could be both dry and tight at the same time. I didn't throw the letter. I took it to a park where wind scrubs thoughts into shorter sentences. I asked Amanda, "Is it true?" She looked at the ground, then at me, then at something behind me that wasn't there. "Yes," she said, and her shoulders did the thing shoulders do when you lift a weight you should have asked for help with a long time ago. She handed me a folder, ultrasounds, clinic notes, messages with a hospital, under an alias, dates that matched numbers that hurt. I walked 3 steps away and came back because leaving in that moment felt like a bad seed. "If he's here," I said, "we do it right. No more lies. No more hiding. For him." She nodded like a person who'd been waiting to be told a hard road was still a road. County clerk in a town I never had a reason to visit, paper with an alias that made me feel like a ghost had signed for a delivery. A shelter with a playground bright enough to make your eyes water. He was almost 2 hair that couldn't decide what direction it wanted, eyes like hers, a focus like mine when I'm building something that matters. I crouched so I wouldn't tower, held out a finger instead of a whole hand, and said, "Hey there. May I?" He took the finger with a grip that said, "Maybe," and that was enough. Later that night, a small crib in a quiet room at the non-profit, a cheap monitor humming a triangle of hallway light on the floor, and me whispering, "Welcome Ryan to a little person who had no idea adults make messes a child has to live inside." Now the internet loves easy categories. Saint or sucker, forgive or forget, hard or soft. But life is most of the time both. I didn't forgive what doesn't belong to me to forgive. I did choose responsibility where an innocent person was involved. We built a legal structure with counselors and lawyers and custody language that doesn't make good TV, but makes good lives. Amanda did her part. I did mine. We turned down the volume on drama and turned up the volume on meals and naps and shoes that go on the right feet. Meanwhile, cases moved forward. Roy found out airports are not magic portals, they are nets. Leon found out cooperation is a word that sounds like compromise but feels like relief. Faye, the ex from Doug's early days, brought a packet of old bills and bank notices with her name on debts she never made. Mark, the young analyst Doug fired, walked in with a notarized statement about off-book files and late-night edits. The DA used the phrase pattern of conduct which is what prosecutors say when they want juries to see the long road, not just the last mile. I visited Doug once, county holding gray paint. A smell like bleach gave up on the room. He looked smaller, which is how rage looks when it runs out of audience. "Feel better now?" he asked with the half-smile of a kid who lost on purpose to say he didn't care. "I feel clean," I said. He said, "You always had everything, which is something bitter men say to skip the line where they apologize. I said I gave you a job, a key, a chance to prove me right about you. You used my name to steal and tried to scare women who never hurt you." He told me the world would never forget my scandal. I told him I didn't want them to forget his truth either. We stared at each other for a long chunk of seconds, two men with the same last name playing two different games with the same deck, and then a guard opened a door that sounded heavier than it looked. The nonprofit opened quietly, the opposite of a ribbon, cutting more like lights, turning on in rooms that needed them. We painted the walls pale, not because paint heals, but because color can tell your nervous system it's allowed to unclench. Tuesday, legal clinics. Thursday, support circles. A hotline that actually answers when you're scared at 2 a.m. Cindy ran the operation with a clipboard and a calm voice that makes people braver. Tess built the intake system so safe that the devil himself couldn't crack it without leaving his IP address. On a wall near the entrance, we hung photos of survivors who gave permission to be seen as more than their worst day. Under one of them, we put a small plaque. A survivor who became a bridge. It had Cindy's name. She cried, then laughed at herself, then told me to stop smiling like that. I started walking at night again, not to outrun anything, just to feel the air move around a body that had been sitting in rooms for too long. In the park, I saw a dad pushing a stroller with a bag of snacks hooked to the handle. Soft voice, patient feet. I felt a tug, not jealousy, not envy, more like a reminder that ordinary is what I want more than exceptional now. I sent my mother a photo of a squirrel doing its messy little life on a bench back, and she wrote back, "Eat because moms don't have to explain the code they use." Let me ask you something straight. Would you have exposed your own brother in a room full of investors on purpose with a big screen and a microphone? Would you have taken in a child born from a lie that almost cracked your skull from the inside? Do you think Amanda deserves anything like a second chapter, or is a line a line? Should justice be only about cages, or do we build bridges for the people who will one day walk out and live near us again? Do you think that's fair? Here's my take after sitting in the middle of it. Betrayal makes you believe you only get to choose between rage and weakness. That's false. There's a third way. It's called being an adult, and it feels like building a life in daylight, even when your heart wants to smash windows at midnight. Evidence isn't cruelty. It's love for the truth. And sometimes the family you protect isn't the one that shares your DNA. It's the one that shows up when you're too tired to pretend. A lawyer asked me if I wanted to push for the maximum sentence on every count, if I wanted to stack years like firewood and walk away warm. I said I wanted the truth to have teeth, yes, but I didn't want my life to be only about cages and keys. We pressed the charges. We stood in court. We told the story with documents. And I also funded a re-entry program because anger can build a good fire, but it doesn't build a house, and I'm trying to live indoors now. Controversial. Sure. But I'm tired of systems that only know how to punish and never learn how to repair. So that's the story I promised. I walked into my own bedroom and met the end of one life. I followed the money and found the knife in the other hand. I put the receipts on a screen and let the documents do the shouting. I set a trap that clicked shut without theatrics. I met a woman in my kitchen who showed me what courage looks like in work clothes. I met a barmaid who became the most trustworthy person in rooms full of suits. I met a child who arrived the wrong way and deserved everything done the right way. And I walked myself back from the ledge of becoming a man I wouldn't want to meet. Now it's your turn to weigh in. If it were you, what would you have done when you touched that doorknob? Would you have kept it quiet to save a family name or taken it to a stage and told the truth in front of people with money on the line? Should a child's innocence change the rules we think are iron? Is justice only about what someone deserves, or also about the world we all have to share next? Tell me in the comments, argue with me if you need to, don't hold back. If this hit you anywhere, you didn't expect, hit like, subscribe, and share it with someone who thinks they have to choose between rage or nothing. We tell messy stories here not to wallow, but to build better rooms. Take your pushback, your own story if you've lived through a version of this. I'll be in the comments like always, reading every word, because sometimes the only way to keep going is to remember. We're not the only ones walking through the dark toward a light. We're still learning how to switch on.